Thanks for checking out Scotty's Hobbies. We're going to be replacing a strut assembly on this here '07 Lexus ES350. This will be the same for Toyota Avalons and Camrys of the same generation. Look for a list of vehicles in the description below. Let's get started. This here is the strut assembly that we're going to be replacing on this vehicle. It includes everything all in one: your spring boot, your upper strut mount, obviously the strut, everything all together. It is very quick to replace, and if you're doing it at home like I am here in the garage showing you how to do it, it is super quick. This job, I did it in probably less than an hour on each side, and I'll go over some more details in the video, how much everything cost, how much it would cost at a shop, all that. So make sure you stay tuned. I'm supporting the lower control arm with my jack and a wood block, just so when I loosen everything, the lower control arm and the brake assembly doesn't flop down and stress out the CV shaft right there. First, you're going to remove this here bolt that is holding on the brake hose and the ABS sensor wire. This took a 12 millimeter socket, and it's going to be 14 foot-pounds when you tighten it back on. Next, remove the clip that holds the ABS sensor wire on to the lower strut bracket, and that would probably be the hub assembly too. To remove your stabilizer link assembly, you could use a 17 millimeter open end like right here and a 6 millimeter hex to hold the threads tight, and you can loosen it that way. But for video's sake and to speed up the process, because I got called into work, we're going to use a impact wrench. This is a really faster way to get it done, but you can use the open end and the hex, and it just works totally fine. Doesn't take much longer than this does as well. If you need any tools or any parts, make sure you look for links in the description below to purchase those. Like, subscribe, and share while you're watching. If you do use this video, or if this video helps you out, make sure you comment below with the year, make, model, engine size, all that good stuff, and let me know. Now, using a 1/2 inch breaker bar, I'm going to remove these 22 millimeter bolts, nuts, these nuts on the lower stabilizer using a 1/2 inch breaker bar. These are tightened down to 155 foot-pounds when we are tightening them back up. And make sure at the end, have a notepad. I'm going to go over everything, all the foot-pounds, or all the proper torque specifications on the bolts when we tighten them up. Get them off. It's pretty easy. Do what you need to do to get them off. Again, video process. To speed up the video process, here is my impact, my handy Ingersoll Rand, one of my favorite tools I have. But you can do this at home. You saw I used a 1/2 inch breaker bar to get that off. I'm on call a lot, so right when I started this, got everything a little bit apart and got called into work. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you. And it is pretty important to use proper torque specifications when you do tighten everything up. You don't want everything or anything to be over tightened or not tightened enough, so that's more of a reason why I do it, because I'm always afraid, did I tighten that up? Did I remember to tighten it? If I do proper torque specifications, I always know. To get these lower strut mount bracket bolts off, it might be pretty hard, especially if you have a lot of miles on these. They get hot, they rust up. You can see I've had a lot, or took a lot to get this one out. I had to use my dead blow, my red hammer right there, to push them out. And don't be afraid to knock them out with a hammer. Be a little afraid if you're going to use a steel hammer on the threads, but these bolts right here are really strong. You do need to worry if you have alignment bolts in there, and that's going to be another thing I'm going to cover later on too, if you need an alignment or not. Actually, I might as well just cover it now. If you do this process, I wouldn't recommend doing your driver and passenger side both times, and get the alignment when you're done. After we've got all those lower bolts removed, set off to the side, let's remove the upper strut mount bracket bolts. To get these nuts off, you're going to use a 14 millimeter. I used a deep socket right here. I'm not sure if you needed to use a deep or not, but that's what I used. After I loosen them all up, I'm going to make sure I leave one of these nuts left on the strut assembly right here, or the upper strut mount assembly, so it doesn't just fall out of the car and onto the ground right now and hurt anything. When we get down to the bottom, we could hold it with one hand, loosen up the last nut on top, and let it drop down. You let gravity do its thing. Makes it much easier. Again, if this video does help you out, make sure you let me know in the comment section below what kind of vehicle you had. If you do have bad struts, or you're wondering if your struts are bad, you might notice a lot of odd wear on the tire. So if you get a lot of like mountainous or valley and pitting of your tire, it could be because your shock or strut is bad. You can see I'm holding the lower strut mount right here on the bottom and just wiggle it around. You can see, like I said, I reached around already and took that top nut off. I just let gravity do its thing and move this strut assembly off to the side. Everything is all here in one. Don't hit the car. To install the new complete assembly as one, like I said, this is super fast. It speeds up the process by a lot when you do this whole strut assembly. You're going to maneuver it in from the bottom up and just put in, or when you get them all lined up, just put on one nut and then get the bottom lined up and come back through and line everything up. The strut tower bracket might be in the way, so it might be easier to install the nut on this here bolt that has nothing around it. You can see it's a little hard to push that nut through that bracket. So just that one is fine. If you get more on, more power to you. But now that one is supported from the top. We could wiggle everything around on the bottom. Gives us a little bit more leeway. Be careful with all the wires and hoses. You could take the ABS wire off completely if you'd like, but you can see it worked just fine for me. And if you do see something where I messed up or it was faster for you or this or that, make sure you let me know. I might be able to learn something, and you might be able to learn something too. So, or teach somebody else something. I appreciate every one of you guys watching, liking, subscribing, and sharing. Without you guys, none of this would be possible. And I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, G, for helping me out being my little camera lady today. Much appreciated. You can see it was a hot, sunny day, blistering here in California. I think this was a July, probably mid-90s, low humidity. You can see it's just going on just fine. I'm lining everything up. Get everything loosely set up first, and then come back through and tighten it up, just so you know everything is lined up. You don't have to force anything in and tighten one thing up and go back, like, man, I need to loosen that up. These 22 millimeter nuts get tightened on. I didn't need to use anything on the bolt heads to hold them tight to torque them down. But if you do, you could use either a open-end wrench or a crescent wrench, it is. You can see down here just lining everything up, making sure everything fits perfectly before I tighten everything up to the proper torque specifications. That there stabilizer link assembly ended up getting replaced because I noticed it was bad while making this video, or replacing that strut. So make sure you check out my other videos for more maintenance, suspension, tune-up, a bunch of stuff on this here Lexus. This is now in our fleet, so we'll be making a ton of videos on it. And I think I've already done the rear struts, brakes all the way around, tune-up, PCV. That'll be in the video library, so make sure you check that out. I didn't torque this one down, and if you do, more power to you. The proper torque specification for this one, I believe, came out to, where did it go? It says 55 foot-pounds. That seems a little crazy on this one, but 55 foot-pounds. I used that their 17 millimeter open end and a 6 millimeter hex to tighten it down. Hasn't given me a problem yet. These here lower strut mount nuts are tightened down to 155 foot-pounds. That is pretty good. So using a 1/2-inch torque wrench, 155 foot-pounds on both. This is where I start to be a little concerned that you should get an alignment after you do this process, because if those bolts aren't in the same exact spot as they were, or maybe over time your suspension is moved, moving those bolts might change your alignment too. So this is why, or this little process right here is why you might want to get your alignment, is tightening everything up right here. Now, last but not least, we're going to tighten up or install the bolt that holds on the brake hose and your ABS sensor wire. This one, if you like, you could torque it down to 14 foot-pounds using a 12 millimeter 6-point socket. It's not the most important to torque down on that one, but hey, at least you know it is tight enough and it is not going to back out. After these are tightened up, the job's pretty much done. That's pretty much it, other than putting the tire back on and properly torquing that down. If you were to take this vehicle to a shop and get this job done, it looks like each side calls for 1.2 hours of labor. So in my area, the labor rate is $90 to $120 an hour. So you're looking at about 200 to 220-ish in labor to get this job done. And if I was to provide the parts, it looks like I could find the parts for $55 to about $130 online. If you need parts or anything, make sure you look for links in the description below to purchase them. And I will make sure they have that, or they're in that price range too. So at a shop, you would probably end up paying about $200 at least per shock assembly. So at a shop, you're looking at maybe about $600 for, on the low end, for both of your front shock assemblies changed. If you do it at home, I think I did both sides for just about $200. And that's it. Hopefully you got the information you needed to get your front struts replaced by watching my video. I will see you on the next hopefully helpful video, and make sure you check out one of these two videos right here. They might be as helpful, maybe more helpful, less helpful, but check them out. And I'll see you again. Thanks for checking out Scotty's Hobbies.